Sometimes Ninjago produces a season that is so beautiful, so well done, and so captivating that it makes you wonder how anyone could get bored of the show. Such great villains with interesting motives, character arcs that tug at the heartstrings, animation and backgrounds so amazing you'll feel like you're there. My personal favorite seasons are my favorite for these very reasons: Sons of Garmadon, Master of the Mountain, and Seabound. Sons of Garmadon had Harumi, one of Ninjago's most well-written twist villains. Before her character was sent through the washing machine and crystallized, Harumi was one of my absolute favorite villains for the sole fact that she was wonderfully unnerving. The way she was able to lie in wait for so long and trick not only the ninja, but the viewers as well, was something that I loved. In terms of character arcs and villainry, Harumi really takes the spotlight here. The colors and backgrounds are also some of the best in this season. For Master of the Mountain, Vangelis is a fantastic villain with a personality I instantly fell in love with. His snarky attitude towards the ninja and his cliché but lovable "no one can save you" speech had me sold even further. In fact, his presence was one of the very few things I enjoyed about Crystallized. Cole's character arc is one of the best season-long ones in the show and added some much-needed depth to his character. I've seen the season at least 8 actual times, and I still can't stay dried-eyed when the scene with Lily comes up. And I mean, just look at the backgrounds for this season. Not just Shintaro, which is supposed to be beautiful, but also the cave itself. The color palette is so pleasing to the eyes, and the actual structure of it all is downright breathtaking. Seabound is a visual treat in every way. Calamar is easily one of the best Ninjago villains of all time, dramatically improved by Giles' incredible voice work. Some of his lines give me actual shivers no matter how many times I hear them.
I can't do anything about the first thing, but as to the second...
Nia's character arc, although it was sort of thrown out and crystallized, was also pretty hard-hitting. And I'm a sucker for underwater environments. They're just always so pretty. These 3 seasons are, to me, perfect examples of what makes Ninjago such an incredibly enjoyable show. If you've got a great villain, good character and story writing, and an interesting setting, you've got my attention. And at first, Skybound seems like it has all of these things. Nauticon is a powerful and clever foe. Nia and Jay have a character arc the likes of which we'd never seen before. The setting is literally a floating string of stolen pieces of Ninjago. On paper, this season seems like it's one of the best. It's an incredibly interesting premise focusing on 2 characters that fans love to see work together. So, what went wrong? Short answer, this.
Hey, sweetheart. Mind sticking around for a segment to teach girls how to apply makeup?
Why is it all sea vessels or she's?
I don't know. Because it takes a lot of paint to make them look good?
Beautiful bride.
Now get ready for the long answer. Skybound, from a cinematic point of view, is a masterpiece. Ninjago seasons typically are. The backgrounds and setting of this season, along with the lighting and most of the animation, are probably the strongest features it has to offer. As for the actual writing and characters, that's where my problems with this season begin. The writing in this season is very hit or miss with the fans. Some people absolutely love Skybound, and some people hate it. It's really the season that's by far the most split down the middle in terms of fan reception, and for good reason. Not everyone can get behind the storyline of guy wants to take over the world, so he marries a teenager. For a long time, I've been a self-proclaimed Skybound hater. I was absolutely convinced that the season as a whole was terrible in every way because of the shortcomings, and I even brought that up in my last video where I again announced to the public that I hate it. But honestly, I think a lot of the reason I convinced myself I hated Skybound was because at the time of watching the season for the first time, I also wasn't the biggest fan of Jaya. I was a middle schooler who thought that it was cool to hate things that were popular, and by the first master was Jaya popular, and so was Skybound in general. I was in a friend group that also felt this way, and so I watched the season twice with a very closed mind, discussed it with those people, and then never watched it again. But I've decided I need to go back and rewatch the season a 3rd time, with a more open mind this time, to see if my opinions change. Okay, so maybe it was a bit hard at times. There are moments in the season, specifically the first episode, that make me put my face in my hands, which is quite the roller coaster because at some points I'm baffled by how good Skybound can be. It's strange how this season ping-pongs from being unbearable to fantastic so much. Somehow, the writers have managed to create a villain that could easily be one of my favorites based on his introduction alone, and then they go completely off and ruin that. Skybound honestly feels like it was a lot of ideas sort of jumbled together. Some of those ideas are very good, others not so much. I think the reason that I'm vastly frustrated by this is because if things were executed better, the season could have been in my top 5. Still, I think Skybound gets a lot more crap than it deserves. There are some very good parts, and even entire episodes. The problem is that the season's issues often overshadow the good bits for a lot of fans, which I completely understand. First off, the way misogyny is handled in this season leaves something to be desired. Despite its flaws, after rewatching all of Skybound, I actually like it. I feel like when people talk about this season, they're either unnecessarily cruel to it, or they treat it like it's a masterpiece that can do no wrong. So let's go through the episodes and talk about what makes Skybound such a beautiful mess. Episode 55, Infamous. It's definitely not ideal when the season opens with one of the fan-favorite side characters being sexist for no reason, even if it is just supposed to set the tone for what the season is going to focus on. The scene shortly after, where Misako has a moment with Nia, is a nice contrast, I suppose, but it didn't really do much for me, and it didn't make up for randomly making Dareth sexist. Misako felt like such a random character to be telling Nia all of this. I get why they did it, she's the only other girl on the bounty, but it really doesn't strike me as particularly interesting. Misako has never shown any interest in teaching or advising Nia before, from what I can remember, and after this moment, I can't even recall a time where she does it ever again. Nia's feelings and actions in this season are completely justified. She feels objectified in the team, and she definitely is. She's labeled as Kai's sister and Jay's girlfriend by not just the characters in the show, but by a lot of fans who used to see her as nothing more. The big thing about having a female main cast member that is romantically involved with another character, or as a family member with another main character, is that there are going to be fans who only see her as that, even if she's so much more than that. I feel like Skybound in general, especially this episode and The Last Resort, are Ninjago's responses to that. I just wish it was executed a little better in the beginning of this episode. But the rest of Infamous is decent to me, not as terrible as I sometimes hear people say it is. Nadakon's intro was a great scene, perfect villain intro that set up his personality and character. The ninja were characterized really well here, and I especially loved Cola in this episode, particularly the scene between him and Wu. He's accepted his situation as a ghost now and is looking forward to his future. And I actually do like the way Nadakon impersonates the ninja and gets them into trouble with the law. It was another good building block for his character. Episode 56, Public Enemy Number 1. Ronan's intro in this episode starts out great. And then he mentions Nia. Seeing him again was definitely awesome. I love him as a character, and his intro here shows that he has loyalties nowhere and works for himself, which is fantastic. But when he gets seemingly offended on Nia's behalf, I couldn't help but cringe, especially after the moment in possession. Ronan and Nia could have had a really great uncle and niece sort of dynamic, and then they had to ruin that in possession, so this part of the scene kind of makes me frown. Some of the dialogue and voice acting is a bit cheesy in this episode, but considering we've seen far worse from this show, it's not too offending. I do also want to comment that Zane is exempt from this. His voice and lines are fantastic here. The team and Brent Miller did a great job with him. His lines are never a problem in the older seasons, and Brent's performance is always incredible, even when Zane's character becomes more frustrating in later seasons. This episode also sets up Jay's motive for the season, and wow, what a motive it is. He wants to wish for Nia to fall in love with him. A bit odd, and I would argue that it's a bit out of character for him to want to force Nia into doing something like that. How did we go from Rise of the Snakes, where he's head over heels for anything Nia does, to Skybound, where he's ready to just manipulate her into whatever he wants from her? Not a great look. And this is where we roller coaster from bad to good, because Ronan's scenes capturing the ninja are very fun. Watching Ronan get to be his clever little self is just always so wonderful. You want to be mad at him and hate him for being such a prick, but you just can't because he's such a great character. Him hacking Zane was especially great to watch. Also, Cole being a nervous eater is a little detail I found very funny. Some fun dialogue in this episode to counterbalance that one scene in the beginning where it was a bit off. This scene also makes me laugh every time.
Shapeshift. He could be anybody. Seriously?
Nauticon getting the Realm Crystal and tricking the Nindroids is another great scene for him. His earlier appearances are very entertaining. When he isn't going crazy over a teenager that looks like his dead girlfriend, he's actually a very interesting villain. Episode 57, Enkrypted. There's a lot to talk about here. Opening scene is sort of weird for me. I don't like the fresh meat bit. I get what they were trying to do, it wasn't that funny. But once that part's done and over, the scene is actually pretty good. This episode also gives us our introduction to the mechanic. Now look, I know the writers giving the mechanic a huge obsession with robots and getting inside of them was to give Zane a conflict in the prison, but it just comes across as him loving robots a little too much. I need writers of TV shows to understand that when you make robots sentient and then make characters that are obsessed with robots in that way, it comes off as a lot different than what they intended. Then we get to see Nauticon getting his crew back. This scene is another great one, but I would have loved to see the realms the crew members were trapped in for so long. But that's one blip in one hell of a scene. Flintlock's introduction set up his character perfectly, and the moment between him and Nauticon does a great job of instantly cluing the viewer into the dynamic they had before they were separated. Then we get a funny little Cole moment. He literally eats the tools they were supposed to use to escape. I'm not going to think about the logistics of a ghost eating. I'm just going to accept it because it's funny. Captain Soto coming back is great as well. He's a funny character, and any chance to see him is a good one. The flashback is an instance of Skybound's beautiful animation and backgrounds. I absolutely love this scene because the setting here is just amazing. Then we get the food fight scene. Mechanic gets his hands on Zane, and once again I must remind the writers that when you write a robot-obsessed character, and the robot he's obsessed with is sentient, it comes across as much more than what they were aiming for. This moment is just straight-up sexual harassment on an android, initiated by a guy who's a little too happy to get inside a robot, not helped by the fact that Pixel says,
"Nobody touches mine, Android."
Also, we get a song that isn't a Weekend Whip remix. A short little thing, but first master if I don't adore it. What a lovely singing voice you've got there, Flintlock. And after the nice little song, we get one of the most beautiful scenes in the entire season. Ironic, considering it's a realm collapsing, but the background animation here is just so beautiful, and the realm itself is very pretty, even while it's being destroyed. It also gives Nauticon his motives for the season in a very touching moment. Gives me shivers every time I watch it. Now the prison escape, which is another very fun scene. It also has a great Shawshank Redemption reference that I didn't pick up on until my most recent rewatch.
Some damn rocks on the windowsill. And that cupcake on the wall. Let's ask her. Maybe she knows. What say you there, Fuzzy Britches?
Episode wraps up with Nauticon realizing Nia looks like Delara, and that's where my problems with him start. Nothing serious yet, but it is a moment that makes a person raise a brow. Episode 58, Misfortune Rising. We open with the ninja on separate missions to aid in their search for Nauticon's ship. Jay and Nia looking for Misfortune's keep on computers in the police department, Zane and Kai trying to get the Destiny's bounty back, and Lloyd and Cole flying over the ocean in search of the enemy ship. It's a fine scene. I liked the banter between Kai and Zane, but other than that, there's nothing of too much substance here. We get some story stuff, like the fact that the ship was there and is now gone, but that's about it. We have a moment between Jay and Nia that's pretty important to their characters. Nia telling Jay that they're just friends, nothing more, and that she doesn't want anything else. It was nice. Even if we now know that it was just because she wanted time to make the decision herself and she really did love Jay, seeing her set some boundaries and stick up for what she wanted was refreshing. And Jay makes his first wish. We get to see Nauticon's manipulation at play, and the fact that Jay is adopted is revealed. A bit of a corny scene at first, but when he actually hears the news and everything else fades out, man, bro straight up dissociates. And the music here, paired with the flash of blue background, it just makes everything feel so heavy. Very well handled moment. Jay's dad being Fritz Donegan's actor was great, of course, and this episode also has a Nauticon and Jay moment I find way too funny.
Adorable.
Underrated joke. But then Jay accidentally makes his second wish, and now he's only got one left. I'm sure that won't be relevant later. He still gets out scot-free, which is not the same for Kai. He makes his 3 wishes and is the first of the ninja to get tricked into the blade when Nauticon gets him alone during the invasion of Ninjago City. This was fitting to me, seeing as he's the blindly determined one who doesn't think ahead further than about 4 seconds. Also, sorry, but this is really funny. Anyways, the ninja have the lantern, but they've lost Kai and the first piece of Ninjago goes missing. Wacky episode with a lot happening. Many of the episodes in this season are like that, a lot going on in a short frame of time. It's partially because of the 22-minute format, but it's also a lot more than other seasons that came before it. That's why I felt like Skybound, especially the first half, was trying to shove a lot of different ideas into one thing. It feels like it goes by really fast, and there's so much happening in that time. Episode 59, On a Wish and a Prayer. I get such bad secondhand embarrassment from Jay in the opening scene. That doesn't make it a bad scene, it just makes it hard for me to personally watch without cringing or skipping. But the moment where Lloyd is planning and Cole pulls Jay aside to call Bull was great. Anytime these two are given the chance to show how close of friends they are, it's an absolute treat. It really shows how much Jay trusts Cole, considering he was the only one Jay was willing to tell he'd made wishes with Nauticon. I really do like that. Their friendship is probably one of my favorite in the show. There's not too much I want to talk about with this episode, actually. Things only get interesting when the ninja take Cliff's ship out to sea to head for the island. Watching Lloyd hand canteens of water to the guy who doesn't need to drink and the guy who dies if he touches water was pretty awesome. Jay being a lightning rod was even funnier. But the real prize of this episode is the scene between Nauticon and Zane. This scene makes me absolutely insane. Watching Zane get cocky and think he can outsmart Nauticon is an absolute delight. The atmosphere of the room with the dark colors and the whole thing going on during a chess match between the two just ties it together so well. This moment does these two characters extremely well, and it's Zane's best moment of the season. Zane being careful and intelligent with his wishes, but Nauticon still finding a loophole to catch him in, makes for a fantastic interaction between them. One of my favorite scenes from the season. And then we get Cole revealing what Jay told him before, and everyone gets pissed off at Jay. It's a scene that forces viewers to sort of pick whose side they're on. Is Jay being treated unfairly here because he was just doing what he thought would fulfill the future he saw? Or are the others right to be upset with them because it cost them Zane? For me, I'm a bit torn. Not because I think Jay is in the right, but because I know he's still looking out for the team and trying to keep them close by and safe. It makes for a great conflict in the episodes and those that follow. Also, a quick side note, a little animation thing I really liked with Jay in the earlier seasons is that his mouth sometimes opens, like, really wide. It's very goofy, and it looks great with the old animation style. Fits his character very well. We have more of Nia, Lloyd, and Cole being upset with Jay as he complains and whines that things aren't fair, which I actually don't get tired of watching because I find it pretty funny. And then we have an instance of Nauticon being really weird towards Nia, which is where I start to cringe on this whole ordeal. Jay is screaming bloody murder as his friends deal with the sky pirates and he tries to get the venom. At least that's funny. But Nauticon kind of ruins the scene for me here. Some of the dialogue here is really awful, too, but then some of it is really good. I don't know, this whole moment is a very mixed bag for me. On a more positive note, I think the fight between Nia and Dogshank is very well done. They bounce really well off of each other, and every moment they get in the show is one that makes me smile. The part here where Nia gets confused that Dogshank freed her, and then the latter responds with, "We fight like girls, not like cheaters. Let's see what else you've got," is especially wonderful to me. Frenemies. Good stuff. Anyways, then Nauticon steals what he thinks is the venom, dumps it out, takes Jay, and everyone is worried for a moment until Nia reveals that they still have the venom. No complaints here. That little moment was good in my book. And looking back on this recording, this is way longer of a section than I thought it would be, so I lied at the beginning when I said I didn't have much to say about this episode. Whoops. Episode 60, My Dinner Date with Nauticon. I don't like the intro to this episode, but I think that's more just because I find Gale gossip kind of annoying and not really because of any problems with the episode itself, so personal grievance, I'll take the L. Moving on, Jay's time spent working on Misfortune's Keep is really good. One thing Skybound does extremely well is develop him as a character, and this is where that arc really picks up momentum. Watching him put up with Nauticon and never break really heightens the appreciation I have for his character. Well, the way his character used to be anyway. I really do miss earlier Jay. Yeah, his character was a bit rough around the edges in early seasons, but he was way better than he is now. I feel like he peaked in seasons 6 to 7, and after that, a slow decline started. I think we all kind of know why that is. Now, I'm not one of those old design good, new design bad people, and I definitely don't hate the Ninjago movie. Jay is just a piece of Ninjago that I personally believe was a lot better before the redesign. But let's get back on topic. Another thing I like about Skybound is the short arc with Cole, Lloyd, and Nia on the island. This is an interesting combination of characters that we don't really get to see, ever, so it's nice to see them interact here. Of course, the big moment of this episode is the dinner scene with Jay and Nauticon, where Nauticon tells our tortured hero that he's going to marry a teenager and become God. Yeah. Again, any scene where Nauticon talks to or about Nia makes me extremely uneasy, and this is no exception. I love Jay here, but Nauticon ruins it. I just can't get behind his motive with Nia without feeling creeped out. There's this weird comment that Cole makes about women in this episode that makes me roll my eyes every time, but it does set up for him and Nia to have a very nice moment. Honestly, I feel like that piece of dialogue is taken out of context and used against Cole's character a lot, and I feel like people gloss over what happens next because directly after he says he was making a joke and then follows it with the sweetest thing I've heard a person say related to that topic.
No, I think the real reason sailors name ships after women is because we name them after the most important people in our lives.
The talk afterward is about Jay's true intentions, and then Cole stating so proudly that he's Jay's best friend, and it's fantastic. And it shows the way the dynamic between the three characters has dramatically shifted for the better since rebooted. It's incredibly refreshing, but that part is left out so that people can make a point about the joke Cole made. Yeah, it was a dumb joke in poor taste, but it's followed up by good stuff. There's some other things that happen here, like the attack by the creatures in the sand, and Jay having to go through Scrap and Tap. Both good scenes that I have no real issues with. Jay gets his eye patch and gets hyped for his future again. Clancy is Clancy, which I always love. Clancy deserves the entire world. Clancy is love. Clancy is life. Oh, fake betrayal scene where the crew messes with Jay is also funny. But this episode ends with my favorite morally questionable crook saving Nia, Lloyd, and Cole from the island, which is fantastic, especially because he doesn't get weird about Nia here. Every scene Ronan is in that Nia is mentioned or also present in, I start staring nervously at the writers in hopes that they don't put a Ronan says or does something weird pipe bomb in my mailbox. Also, him shifting sides again to be back with the ninja wasn't weird to me either. He witnessed them save the city, so the commissioner's cool with them now, so Ronan's cool with them now. Episode 61, Wishmasters, Kevin and Dan. Yeah. Anyways, Dareth and Ronan are both great in the opening scene, and Lloyd gives me secondhand embarrassment. Honestly, the one problem I have here is the self-insert. More pieces of Ninjago go missing, Nauticon is gaining power, the backgrounds are still stunning. Epic typical Skybound moments. Instead of just floating up to the ship, Cole jumps and nearly falls. Makes you wonder if his ghost powers just existed for an episode and then promptly got retconned so he wasn't too overpowered. But then 2 seconds later he turns invisible, so he does still have them. The only thing proved here is that Cole is still not the sharpest tool in the shed. It's okay, we love him anyways. The following scene is a Jay and Cole one, and this is one of my favorite Cole scenes from this season. It's a huge contrast from their earlier conflict in the season where Cole lets everybody in on Jay's secret. They both apologize here, they both show the viewers that they still need each other, and it's really nice to see stuff like that from them. I wish we got it more. Another great scene in this episode is the moment where the remaining ninja are captured and trying to reason their way out of it. Well, mainly Lloyd. Watching them bounce off of each other like this is really nice, and there's some great dialogue here. And then the scene after is a direct and total opposite of that. I hate Nauticon here. He's weird. He's creepy. He's coming onto a teenage girl. None of it is helped by the fact that the dialogue is really mediocre. Nauticon has a good line here, maybe two, but really that's it. Everything else about this sets off alarms in my head. Cole falls off the ship into... Oh, wait. Wrong script. Hang on. There we go. Cole nearly falls off the ship into the water, but he's saved by everyone deciding it's time to make every little wish they can think of. The scene is pretty fun, to be honest. Watching Jay, of all people, trying to be the rational one as everyone gets absolutely nutty and silly style with it is way funnier than it should be. The tiny JS scene we get here is really nice. I don't have much to say about it. It just makes me smile. Oh hey, look at that. Lloyd and Cole are dead. Episode 62, The Last Resort. Nia and Jay are both great in the beginning of this episode. Jay being so insistent on rowing and Nia helping out and teasing him is very in character and I love them for that. Another little detail, Tidy is cleaning up everything as Jay takes things out of the bag, and that is absolutely adorable. Very nice little background touch. Flintlock and Nauticon have an argument this episode, and it's one of the few times in later Skybound where I actually really like Nauticon. His speech here is fantastic, Flintlock's response is fantastic, and the voice work is perfect in every way! Seeing these two characters who we've been told are very close and reliant on each other now break apart in this conflict is very hard-hitting. Nauticon is willing to throw away everything to get his infinite wishes, even his closest crew member and first mate. And then in comes Echo Zane! The implications of Echo are incredibly sad, and thinking about it for more than 2 seconds makes my very soul hurt. Dr. Julian was banished to this island as a prisoner and built another Zane out of heartbreak, and then when his son finds him and he escapes the island, he just leaves Echo there. Echo is just sitting there for like 3 seasons, doing nothing but rusting away, and Zane never knows that he has a brother trapped in his dead dad's basement because Dr. Julian never told him. I love kids' shows. At least watching Echo and Tidy play chess was cute. Also, Nauticon harasses Clancy again, and once again I must feel bad for Clancy. Then we get to the problem part of this episode. Nia gives Jay this whole speech about how she wants to forge her own path in life, not defined by who she's seeing or what people tell her to be. And then when Nauticon's crew attacks the lighthouse, she immediately flips this on its head. I was with her during her second speech all the way up until the very end, where she makes what sounds like a Star Wars reference and then begs Jay to come save her. That struck me as incredibly odd, and I literally rolled my eyes every time I watched that scene. At least her throwing Jay into the portal before he could kiss her was comical. Episode 63, Operation Lando. Okay, the intro to this episode is kinda... The dialogue is really weird. I really just don't like it that much. But the next scene with Nia is a bit better. Her interacting with Dogshank again is fantastic. Anyways, Jay takes a second to whine about how everything sucks, and then his dad yells at him for it, which is funny, and I don't have any issues with it. It brings Jay into action, which was needed. He goes on to assemble a team that I really wish had its own spin-off series. He explains to them what's gotta be done, and this has nothing to do with anything, but I love how Ronan just doesn't know how to sit in chairs like a normal person. He's my favorite. Why is he like that? Anywho, after failing to stop the 2 most annoying side characters of the season, they go off to kick butt. I like watching them all work as a team, and this moment right here, yes, certified classic from where I'm from. Sneaking up to the wedding is great. Very, very nice little scene with enough action and background detail to not feel like it's dragging on. You know what's not great? Jay getting up to Nia and her instantly going back on everything she said, dropping her anger, and just being a damsel in distress out of nowhere. It annoys me so much how her character constantly goes from independent and angry to docile and scared in this season. But her talk with Nauticon as Jay is just screaming like an insane person in the background admittedly makes me laugh every time. The replacement ninja have another great scene here. Everyone wanting to strike Jay down and Echo accidentally sending him into the blade is another fun little moment with them. I truly think Echo was raising his hand because he wanted to be included, not because he wanted to hurt Jay. Bro doesn't get the concept of mortality, he's just being a little silly.
Everybody was doing it. I just wanted to be popular.
The scene inside the blade is weird to me just because of the voices, and unlike the sneaking around scene, this one feels like it drags on for entirely too long. All in all, not my favorite moment. What's going on outside of the blade, however, that's my favorite fight scene of the entire season. Watching everyone improvise with garden tool weapons and be so goofy with it is very enjoyable. Echo Zane's little laughs, Soto's pose here, and Ronan with both of those previous two things. The animation and detail here is unmatched in other fights of the seasons. It's just so charming. This episode ends with everyone being freed from the blade, and my last gripe with it is that Zane is faced with a guy who looks like a steampunk version of him, and has absolutely no questions about it. Kind of funny, but mostly confusing and annoying. I feel like if my friend introduced me to a clone of myself, my reaction would not be as calm and delighted as Zane's was. Whatever though, Zane's not allowed to have a personality outside of he's smart and goofy. Episode 64, The Way Back. Based on the title alone, when I first watched this season, I could pretty much tell how things were going to wrap up, and honestly, during my first watch through, I completely despised everything about the ending, and wrote the season off as Ninjago's absolute worst for it. It felt like a cheap cop-out in a season I was already hating at the time. In other words, I was entirely harsh to it. But honestly, now on my third watch through, I realized that resetting everything that happened was kind of the one good ending this season could have had. If they didn't reset, Ninjago City would be absolutely destroyed by falling pieces of land, Pixel and Nia would have been permanently dead, Lloyd would have just been a super old dude, etc., etc. Resetting was the only way to win here. The execution of this idea, though, still not my favorite thing. The episode starts off strong. I liked Lloyd being the one, with his newfound wisdom, to point out that Ninjago City is kind of screwed if the floating islands fall. Wu agreeing with him is a nice touch as well, because they're the wise old guys. Jay taking charge is also splendid. But then Nadakon is super weird about Nia again and turns her into his dead girlfriend. Creepy, 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 but Nadakon's crew finally completely turns against him, which had me cheering. So sad that Clancy and Doubloon got absolutely owned, though. Rest in peace. Cole forgets he can fly again, Flintlock and Dogshank continue to be the cutest friendship ever, and the Nadakon clothes go splode. I really liked how after this, when everyone was having a really deep and sad discussion, Zane is just in the background climbing all over Jay like an animal, and laughing at the bar of metal? Huge wad of duct tape? Over Jay's mouth. Another background Skybound moment that gets a chuckle out of me. But the whole Nadakon doesn't really have power over us thing was very dumb to me. It really just doesn't make any amount of sense to say, well, the wishes only hurt us because we let them, when that's literally just not true. And then Flintlock gets his ability to aim back. It felt like just a cop-out to give them a good person to shoot at Nadakon. And I get it, Flintlock is the best person for this, seeing as he was very personally affected, and he and Nadakon used to be very close. It's an emotional thing. But if the wishes truly didn't have any power, Zane would be able to put Pixel back into his head, and Lloyd would go back to being young or something, so that part was dumb. There's also the most underwhelming final fight of all time. It really doesn't do anything for me. It's pretty, sure, but so is all of Skybound. Nia and Nadakon both get hit with the venom, though, which is where things get interesting again. Jay is forced to make a choice. Stop the villain, or save the one he loves. In the end, he says, nah, I'm gonna do whatever I want, and just accidentally says just about the smartest thing he's ever said. He wishes none of Skybound ever happened, causing everything to reverse back to the moment on the rooftop from the season's first episode. Honestly, I'm not mad about this ending. At least not in the way I used to be. I think it was really the only option to end the season, and that all of Ninjago forgetting about what happened was necessary. So what would I change about this ending? Well, I'd really just make it so that all of the ninja, as well as Nadakon's crew, remember what happened, not just Nia and Jay. It keeps the development between Cole and Jay, keeps Dogshank, Flintlock, and the others on good terms with the ninja, among other things. With Jay and Nia never talking about Skybound again, it unironically feels like they're hiding things from their friends, especially Zane. They literally never tell anyone about Echo Zane, even after all that he did for them. And they just let him continue to sit under the lighthouse and rot. That, more than anything, deeply upsets me. So, yeah, Skybound is both a masterpiece and a frustration, something I look back on with both fondness and annoyance. Overall, my reaction to this season is that it's mid-tier. It's far from the worst Ninjago season, but it's not top 5 by a long shot either. I feel like if a few things were tweaked here and there, especially how weird Nauticon was towards Nia, this scene could have been leagues better. But I digress. What we have is what we have, and it's not terrible. Thank you for watching this video all the way through. An even bigger thank you to all of the praise, discussion, and well-reception on my previous 2 videos. For some reason, they exploded from a few hundred views to several thousand, literally overnight, and I couldn't be more grateful for it. You've all shown me a lot of support. From my closest Ninjago friends to the general audience who just saw this video and they're recommended and clicked, I thank you. I'm getting to talk about something I've been passionate about for almost 12 years, and I'm actually gaining an audience while doing that. It's more than I could ever ask for. We're nearing 3,000 subs much faster than I anticipated, by the way. Discord server will still be made when we hit that 3K mark. Thank you to everyone who's been patiently waiting for this video. I know I've been saying on various different sites and such that it's been coming. I've been busy studying for the ACTs and taking care of my mental health, both of which are prioritized over YouTube. You've all been wonderfully patient, and I'm very grateful for all of you. That's enough of me being sappy, though. Have a great morning, afternoon, night, or whatever it is for you. Corbian out!